everybody, and welcome back to A Catholic's Perspective, the podcast all about being a young Catholic surviving in a secular world. I hope you guys are all doing well. I have a special guest with us today. I have John Kraemer. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I think this is such a unique thing because you have been building churches out of Legos for 25 years, right?
Yeah, all of my own design.
That is so cool. And you call this the Lego Church Project, right?
Yes, and the reason why it's called a project is number one, it's ongoing because every year I build a new church. I tear down the old one and start the process all over again. But I also use it to talk about issues related to disability. I have a malformed cerebral palsy, so I'm showing no matter what challenge or disability you face, God can still use your talents. It is a mission that I live because of my own challenges.
Right, absolutely. And how did this all kind of start? You wanted to all of a sudden just start building churches out of Legos? How did that start?
Well, growing up in Saginaw, Michigan, which is about 2.5 hours north of Detroit, we used to live across the street from Christ the Good Shepherd Parish back when it was called St. Helens. So growing up, the church was our foundation. That's where we were at. We were attending mass, we were taking part in activities. So everything I was doing was related to that. So growing up, I wasn't good at building spaceships, but I was good at building buildings. And eventually they turned into churches. What took it from a childhood uh, hobby into something a little bit more profound is when I started doing the public displays.
Hmm.
First couple of years in Flushing, and then I started doing the annual Christ the Good Shepherd St. Helens display around Christmas time, starting with season 4 and going onward to today. In fact, getting ready to head to the parish this weekend, hopefully.
That's awesome. And so you've always loved doing this type of thing, right? Like building with the Legos and everything.
Yeah, and I love doing the churches. Out of all the things that I've built over the years, I think the churches are the ones that stand out to me because it is a reflection of my view of the faith.
Mm,
Uh, when you look at my work, you see the beauty that I try and put into it. You see where everything is at, and you see all the people that are inside. In fact, that's actually probably the first comment that when people see my work in person, their first comment is, "Oh, the church is full of people." Yes, that's on purpose.
it's supposed to be like that.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing too is that it's not a reflection of the past. Rather, it is a prayer for our present and our future. In fact, when you look at my work over the years, you realize that I'm actually praying with my hands. Prayer is the foundation on which the project is built on, quite literally. I will
Right.
take everything that's going on around me, thoughts, worries, fears, and just put it into what I'm doing. And I can spend anywhere from about almost close to about a month and a half usually to build one of my projects.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's beautiful. And to have like every brick be a prayer almost. When I was younger, we used to make tie blankets and we said that every knot was a Hail Mary or something. It's similar to that, right?
Well, and it's like I'm taking everything that's going on in the church, the good, the bad, everything that's going on in my own life. The various challenges I have is related to the cerebral palsy, issues going on with the family, with medical issues and whatnot. Because obviously, the older parents get, the more challenges they face, and we all face our own unique difficulties at times. And I'm able to put that into my work. I'm able to sit down for hours on end, building each individual section. And some sections can take longer than others, and some go according to plan,
Right. And
mostly.
that's kind of just the way that life is too. Some things we have all planned out and structured and we're like, "Oh, perfect." And then we start building and then God has different plans and it's almost metaphorical for our faith in a way. And I think that's just really cool how you can take something and make make it just an expression of your faith. Are these churches that you have seen personally, are they inspired by anything specifically?
They are my own design. Off the top of my head, I'm not a trained architect in any sense of the word, but I've had a chance to either online see photos or visit different parishes. So a lot of that kind of goes into my thought process. I'm inspired by a lot of different places. So it's not just one church that I'm patterning off from. It's basically my combination of taking different bits and pieces and putting it into a church within the limits of the size that I have. one thing that people may not realize is that my projects are about 47 inches on the long side to about 25 inches on the wide side, and a height to the tip of the bell tower about 25 inches. So I'm kind of
Wow.
limited a little bit in terms of how I can build things. And plus, I'm also making it so people can actually see inside because I want everyone to be able to look inside and see what's going on, to see the people that are sitting inside there. One of the things that people will notice is that I do have representation of disabilities.
Okay.
I have service animals in there. I've got a sign language interpreter in there. I've got a couple power chairs of my own design and a couple wheelchairs. So I try and have a representation of those with disabilities because that's what I live with.
Right.
Uh,
How has you have cerebral palsy, you said earlier, correct?
Mild form of it, yes.
Yes. How has that impacted your faith life? How has that contributed to your faith?
Long ago, I made a decision that I would not complain to God about what goes on with me. I am rather thankful that I have the unique talents that I do, and that I'm able to use my own disability as a way to showcase what people can do, to
Mm.
give hope for someone who may be struggling. They may have their own challenge. It may not be cerebral palsy, but if I can give some hope to that, and it allows me to rely on God in a way that many may not realize. It allows me to focus more on Him, to understand that, yeah, there are going to be days where I'm having a rough time, but I can put that into prayer. And it may not necessarily get better, but I'll have the strength to deal with it in a way that others may not. Uh, there are times when my eyes are going really bonkers with a condition called visual snow. And those are the days where you just have to really trust that the Lord has got something that works. And it's just a matter of riding out the storm. And I've learned through my own disability, through my faith, how to ride those out, difficult as that can be at times.
Yes. And I think, when you say that a phrase comes to mind. I forget who said it, but basically God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And your story just reminds me of that just in general, where it's like God gave you these beautiful talents and this ability to touch people in a way that I don't think has really ever been done before. I mean, I've heard of Lego churches before here and there, but nothing to the extent, of course, that you have done or to the way that you've been able to touch people or just have them, see the different designs you've come up with and inspire them in that way.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the unique aspects of this ministry is that, yeah, there are people that are building churches out of Lego. I've seen some pretty elaborate ones, but I'm the only one that I know of that does it yearly, where I will build, display, tear down, and then start the process all over again. So you have to figure 25 years of doing this, 25 different churches I have built,
That's amazing.
and each one has their own unique character to them. Uh, the, the stories I could tell you, and even there's always a challenge when you're trying to move one because it
Oh,
takes
I
two
believe
people in
it.
a coffee cart because they weigh about 70 to 80 pounds, give or take. And the roof cross that's on top is a standalone piece, and that has enough weight on its own.
I believe it. It's almost like trying to transport a wedding cake in a way. It's like very carefully, don't hit any bumps.
And it's like this year, I went up to Standish, Michigan, which is just north of Bay City. The people there were a little on the nervous side of bringing the project out because they never moved anything that big before. Now, I knew what to expect because I've done this numerous times with similar scale buildings. And actually, the project usually holds up pretty good. There's a few issues here and there that come up, but that's relatively minor.
Right.
Um, and the parish and standards of resurrection over there, that was the first time display for me because I'd never been out there before. But the priest was one that I was familiar with. He's seen my work before.
It's kind of cool how the communities get to experience because you take one to a different church every year, right? Or is it the same church?
Yeah, well, what I'll do is I'll usually do about 4 or 5 displays depending on who invites me out. And case in point, for season 25, I had a chance to visit the parish up in Standish. I did a bazaar at Holy Spirit in Saginaw. I went to Assumption Parish for my third year in Midland, and
Okay.
then I'm coming to Christ of the Good Shepherd Parish for my annual display that's been going on for 21 years now.
Which is really cool that you get to share that with your community that you grew up with.
Yeah, I grew up in the parish. I mean, with the exception of about a 7-year stint where I was living in Flushing with my parents. Yeah, I mean the parish, St. Helens Christ the Good Shepherd, was the parish I went to.
Mhm.
And then when I got back to Saginaw, I eventually found my way back to the parish, and that's where I attend. That's how I get there. I have a couple rides lined up usually to get me there because I don't drive. And I think
Right.
that's one of the interesting parts is for someone who does not drive, I certainly know how to get around.
I always think it's funny how people come up with so many excuses as to why they can't go to church, and it's just like, people who can't drive find a way to get to church, you know what I mean? It's like, it's all
Well,
about priorities too.
it is a topic that I've written about a couple times. It is a topic that comes up frequently with some of the people I've interviewed with before. When I've talked with William Hemsworth and also Matt Swain from Sunrise Morning, we always usually get into a little bit of a discussion because not everyone has the option to find a ride. They desire to attend mass, but the transportation options are just not there because they may not necessarily know who to ask, or public transportation may not be a viable option, or even a ride sharing may be a little bit out of their price range because of their fixed incomes. I know that's certainly the case for me. I have always been blessed to be able to find a ride. In most cases, I think there's like one or two times where I missed a holy day because I couldn't find a ride, and just with this most recent one for All Saints, a ride materialized at the last second. So,
A little blessing right there.
well, our music director was going to the cathedral in the evening,
Oh, okay.
and he already had his wife and one of the other members from our church, and he sent me a message saying asking if I had gone to mass yet, and I told him no. We'll pick you up.
It's really
It
sweet to
wasn't
have
even a
somebody
question
like
about whether or
that.
not I was going to go. It's a question of is this he's going to pick me up, but he's like that.
Yeah.
Dave's a wonderful guy. He does a beautiful job for the music at Christ the Good Shepherd. Really blessed to have him at our parish, to be perfectly honest. And he's done a lot for me over the years too. So
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, having people like that is so important, and not many people have someone like that in their lives. So it's so cool that you get to have somebody like that and to share your gifts with them and to be a part of that community. That's really nice. I think what are some I guess overall, what are like some challenges that you have faced over the years with your disability, but then also some of the joys and just blessings that have also come from it?
some of the challenges that I tend to face that are chronic in nature is I have to be very careful with my emotions. If I get too worked up, my balance in my attempting to walk goes short circuit.
Hmm.
I will try and move one way, my legs will not cooperate, and I could end up ping ponging across the room. I've done that. I have done that before. I also have severe tinnitus, which can impact my hearing a little bit, especially in the higher frequencies. And I've also got mentioned before visual snow, which is basically a constant static
Hmm.
in my vision, which can sometimes also trigger light sensitivity after images where you see an echo of what you just saw for a couple seconds. And it can be annoying, be distracting, but you learn to deal with it. You learn to overcome it. You learn to navigate around it. And yet, even through all that, I'm still able to build these beautiful artistic expressions. I am still able to spend countless hours at the bricks coming up with something off the top of my head.
Hmm.
Uh, I can go in with 1,001 ideas, but it's the Lord who's working through me to tell a different story. And I mean, I'm looking at season 25 right now, starting to get a parts list together of what I want to do for next season. And I may sit down and the Lord may say, nope, John, I want you to go in a different direction. I want you to highlight something else.
Hmm.
And to be open to what the Lord has for you. And it's even something I try and struggle with a little bit myself is because we want to be in control. We want to dictate the path for our life, and yet the Lord may have something different in mind, and we need to be open to that. I certainly have had to learn that the hard way. because I can be quite headstrong at times.
I think we've all been there at one point or another. The wanting control, the wanting to be able to know where we're gonna go. I think a lot of it comes down to insecurity for many people and just wanting to be sure of what God wants of them, but without that straightforward God telling them exactly what's gonna happen, it's very difficult, but it's something that we all need to work on in the sense of, you know, just endless trust. And I think that's why the litany of trust has helped me so much. It's just being able to, even if I don't necessarily feel like I trust God, still taking the steps to make myself trust God in a way is I think really important too.
Well, for me, trust is something that, I mean, we all have issues with trust, and it's kind of hard when we can't see the road ahead of us. That is when our trust in the Lord must become more important because we may not be able to see the way forward, but God already has the plan mapped out. And I mean, look at me when I'm working on the project. I mean, and I take a lot of analogy from that because there's a lot of similarities to that. I may start off with an idea. I may have it roughly mapped out in my mind as to how I want to proceed. But sometimes what works good on paper may not actually translate very well into the actual world. And the Lord will sometimes just give you a gentle nudge to to make a better choice.
Mm,
I've certainly learned that myself over the years, especially when I'm navigating the disability stuff. What is a crisis? Lord, what is a crisis? Is this something I have to worry about, or is this something that I can just learn to manage, learn to deal with? That is something that I've had to take into consideration. Uh, People like me who have these invisible disabilities always have to face a lot of different challenges because people may not always understand. And
right.
it's not necessarily my job to make everyone accept, but at least to let them know that this is what's going on, this is how I navigate with it, and just ask for consideration in what's going on. And that's where the trust in the Lord comes through because you have to trust that you're going in the right direction. And even that means dealing with people sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the hardest thing. Was it Mother Angelica said that if it wasn't for people, we would all be saints or something to
Yeah,
the
yeah, I remember that one.
It's pretty accurate because honestly, like, we get under each other's skins and everyone has a different worldview and react to different things differently. It's just such a mess at times that it can be disheartening, and sometimes all you want to do is just lean on God alone because it's less drama, less explanations. God already knows everything, and yet we still need each other.
Yeah, and well, you have to figure for me, because I don't drive, I have to rely on other people sometimes.
Right.
Not only to get to mass, but even just to get to like the store every week. Now, thankfully, I am blessed in that I do have those uh, elements in place. And but where I go with the project on this, especially when it comes to the transportation, is I've got this platform. I can use that to highlight the issue and probably try and down the road help someone who's struggling with that issue.
Mm.
Someone who wants to go to mass who does not have a ride. They're trying everything that they can. And that's one of the things that I try and highlight because it's an unrealized need. And I do talk about it a lot because it comes up a lot. And that's where the trust in the Lord comes through because you have to trust that there's a solution somewhere. We may not be able to see it at the moment, but it's there.
Mm.
And certainly, I certainly have my moments where it's like, oh Lord, how am I going to do this? Oh, okay, that works. May not
Yeah.
quite be what I was expecting, but
And it's always funny too, because God has, like, this sense of humor where sometimes he does things that just make you, like, face palm or you're just like, "Really?" Like, "Okay, God. Yep, this makes more
all the
sense now."
time with me, all the time, I will try and pray on something, and it's like
Mhm.
quite literally, it's like, okay, Lord,
And I think that's the interesting part too, is the fact that God understands each and every one of our needs. It's such a weird thing to kinda wrap our minds around, but
yeah,
he
I know.
does understand us, you know?
And I know that with my own struggles, there are days where I'm on top of the ship looking at the waves, and then there are days where I'm below decks holding on for dear life. But what's important for me is knowing what the storms are and knowing that God already has everything under control. And it's just a matter of just riding things out, letting things calm down. There have been many times where things have seemed to like go totally chaotic for me, and out of the blue, the Lord will do something that will change the direction, and things won't seem either they won't seem as bad or they'll actually improve a bit.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. It's interesting how, when we hand things over to God, things just become easier to carry because He helps us kind of carry our cross.
A total surrender is what I would refer to it as.
Yes.
A total
Yes.
surrender. Not easy to do though, because once again, we want to be in control of our own destinies. And that may not what we want may not be what the Lord wants. And that's something that I've had to learn the hard way too many times, especially when I'm doing the Lego church project. You
Yeah.
should see some of the challenges I have with that. I mean, not just from the building standpoint, because you have to figure I'm doing something with Lego that most people would not consider to do something with a minifigure scale to have full details on the inside. And if you look through, I mean, I'm spending countless hours just working on the floors alone.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
all the minifigures have to be sent in by hand. I have to rig Christmas tree lights inside, which
Oh,
are not
wow.
really worked with Lego. I've got two strands of 100 count lights, and I run everything through the bell towers because that works out. It works out beautifully that way. And so I'm having the challenges with the build. So which pushes me to my limits. It tests
Mm,
me. It tests my resolve. Even when things don't always go according to plan, a section of a wall may not be as stable as I would like. The plates may have a little bit of a wave to them, so things are not going to want to line up right away until you get more weight on them.
right.
Uh, Roof tile, or not roof tiles, balcony tiles may have to have a little creative persuasion to get into place, which has been a reoccurring issue with the last couple seasons because I've got three big ones for the back end of the balcony where the quarter loft is,
Oh, okay.
and those have to be set in very carefully because it's just the nature of the design because I've got the lower lights run through. So I've got to take into consideration with those, get everything lined up. Yeah. But then you've
Wow.
got the challenge of finding parishes that would be willing to host me.
Hmm.
Uh, One of the surprises that comes out when I talk to people is they're surprised I don't get a lot of invites.
Hmm. Yeah.
Parishes interested in having me out because they say they're people are telling me that I'm doing important work. And to a degree, I agree with them because of the nature of what I talk about. But because I don't drive, not all parishes are interested in or have the ability to make those accommodations. I've been blessed with some parishes that have been willing to go that extra mile
Mm,
to allow me to come out, such as Christ the Good Shepherd, such as Assumption Parish. There are a few other parishes that I would love to do a full scale parish display with. And what I do for those displays is I'm available before and after the masses, so people can have a chance to see the work in person. They can look inside. They can find out where R2D2 is hiding for the year. Uh, Usually, the kids will be the first ones to find him, but
Is this
uh,
like a reoccurring thing to have R2D2 in there?
yes. And originally, it kind of started as I put him in somewhere, forgot that I put him in, and I had the project set up in a commons area in my complex, and one of the grandkids from one of the neighbors came in and bolts out, "I found R2." And he was hiding in a very obscure spot in a place that is not easily seen. So from there, it just kind of became this reoccurring theme of, okay, I'll just put R2 somewhere in there, usually in the main entryway. Um,
A little tradition.
and then I've got a few other oddball things in there for the kids to look at,
That's awesome, and I
but
think
it
are
certainly gets their attention.
are the kids the ones who primarily are, like, drawn to the I mean, obviously, they're Legos, kids love Legos, but have you noticed the parents and the just everybody kind of like they all enjoy this? Because I mean, I would assume they would, but some people
The
look at a
kids,
Lego church and they're like, "Oh, it's just for kids." It's like it's not just for kids.
it's kind of funny because the kids see it as big, they see it as bright, they see it as Lego. they're looking inside, they see the Optimus Prime figure in there, they'll see Batman maybe or Bruce Wayne in there, they'll see the droids hiding in there somewhere. But then you have the adults, especially the older generation. They will look at my work, they'll look in, and they'll see themselves.
Mm.
I've had many comments where someone will point out, "Oh, that's where I'm sitting. Oh, wow, the church is full. There's so and so who's in the wheelchair." I've seen people see themselves sitting inside. So it really is a toss up as to who enjoys the work more, the kids or the adults, especially the seniors.
Mm.
The seniors are the ones that I think they're the ones that are more reflective. They're the ones that see themselves even more so in the project. And don't get me wrong, younger people, younger adults too, but a lot of the seniors really are overjoyed when they see it because they see the past. They see a reflection of how the church was when they grew up,
Mm.
when our parishes were full. And that is something that I always try and make sure that I have all the figures that I have available inside, both in the lower half, the main floor, but also in the balcony section that I'm slowly working on. So my eventual goal with the project is to have every seat filled on purpose. And but it's a growing prayer. It's a prayer for our parishes, and that's where a lot of the adults realize that there's definitely a deeper meaning to
Mm.
my work, other than just building the giant church out of Lego bricks. And that's something that I've been trying to bring more attention to over the last several years, especially with doing interviews like this, where I can go into a little more of the motivations behind what it is because there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
I enjoy doing the builds, even though they test me, but I also enjoy doing the displays because it gives me a chance to interact with people, to show them what I'm doing in person. The pictures that I post don't always do this justice. So this to see the reaction of the people, the kids will ask some of the intense questions.
Kids usually
Case
do.
in point, when yeah, uh, when I'm at Assumption Parish, they'll usually let the kids do a little bit of question and answer. So they'll come in different groups and they'll talk to me and they'll ask their questions. And had one girl this year ask me, "Do you get frustrated building the project?"
Hmm.
Yes, I do. But then I tell them, but then I told the kids, everyone gathered, how I navigate that is through prayer, to figure out what the best possible answer is. Because I mean, I always know. I may do a lot of different things with the project, and I may run into a roadblock here and there, but prayer is what guides me through it. And then when I'm talking with the adults, though, I've had grandmothers bring their children up. One year I was out in a parish, rural parish, and a grandmother had her 5-year-old grandson who had cerebral palsy. And her grandmother told me that because of my own cerebral palsy, I gave their grandson hope.
Oh,
I gave their family hope. Those are the things I live for. Those are the moments that touch my own heart. And it's why I love being able to go out into the community with my work so people can see what I'm doing and learn more about the value that people with disabilities can offer.
yeah, and I think especially because I I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like despite the fact that we've made leaps and bounds medically for disabled people, I still feel like there's almost this taboo topic when discussing disabilities because today people are like, "Oh, don't be offensive or this or that." But in reality, people with disabilities like yourself, you want to get your story out there. You want to talk about it. You want to spread awareness, and I don't think it's fair for people to um I don't wanna say, not give you guys a voice because you guys have one, but be more reluctant to in the fear of, like, I don't know, being quote unquote "offensive" in today's world. It's so weird to
Yeah,
me.
I think people are afraid.
Mm.
I think they're afraid that they're going to say something wrong. With me in particular, I'm pretty open about what goes on with me. You look at especially my Twitter feed. I when I'm having a bad day, like with the anxiety and stuff, I tell people because I ask for prayers on. If people want to know more about what's going on with me in terms of how the disability affects me, I'm more than happy to answer it. How are people going to learn if they're
Mhm.
not going to be one to ask the questions? What kind of accommodations would I need? In my case, when I'm at mass, because I don't stand very well, I sit. It's not that I don't want to sit; it's just because standing is too difficult for me. I've got to be very careful when I'm walking, if especially when I'm having a bad anxiety day, because at that point I run the risk of my legs not wanting to cooperate. So I take into consideration that. Some people, if I'm out and about with them, they will drive up to the door to let me out because they know that my walking is not going to be that great. It's just simple things. And I think that as we head into the church, the uh, accessibility is not always about uh, making things easier. It's about going into the mindset that we want to be accommodating and that there are simple ways to do it.
Mm.
At our church, we have handrails now in certain places that we didn't have before, and it's helped out a lot. Our church made some accommodation, made some changes where instead of having steps to enter into the back entrance, we have ramps now. Just simple things. They were doing some renovations on the concrete, and they just decided at that point that that was the perfect time to make some minor changes, and it's been wonderful. It's made it
Oh.
easier on me to walk up because stairs are not exactly my friend. I can do them to a degree, uh, but yeah, it's so a lot of it is attitude and mindset, and I'm afraid that disability is still a little bit of a taboo subject.
I agree.
Unfortunately, well, but like you said, people are afraid to offend. It takes a lot to offend me. Seriously. I know I'm a big guy. I know that I'm wobbly a little bit when I walk, but if you sit down and talk with me, I'll fill you in a little bit on what's going on and why it's happening.
Yeah, and I think that's the main thing is especially after 2020, I feel like a lot of people felt isolated and were isolated, and now everybody just kind of avoids each other in some way, shape, or like I'm sorry, but, like, before 2020, I could sit down with somebody and talk to them, just a stranger after church and be like, "Oh, tell me about you." Now everybody's on their phones, everybody's like nobody smiles at each other, nobody makes eye contact. It's like, "Don't look at me, I don't wanna talk to you." Now, when I'm walking around the neighborhood, I'm like that because I'm like, "When I'm on my walk, don't talk to me." But but you know what I mean? I feel like there's this disconnect, and trying to reconnect people with each other has been very difficult, at least in my experience.
It has been. I know that having the churches shut down for an extended amount of time didn't exactly do us any favors.
Nope.
And I know that the isolation certainly had a negative impact on a lot of people, myself included. My anxiety went through the roof and has never really fully recovered from that. But and I try and make a point to talk to people after mass myself. There are people that we have in our church that I try and stay up with, see how they're doing. I'm also part of our parish choir, so I also have that community outreach as well. In fact, that's how I get to mass is through the music director
Oh, okay.
or through one of the members there. So yeah, and yeah, we kind of got scared of being around people, and
Yeah.
we need to kind of soften that stance because there's going to be all kinds of stuff going around.
Mhm.
I
Always
certainly
has
know that
been.
I've been hit with bugs here and there. It's like I was doing a display a couple years ago at one of my favorite parishes up that way in Bay City, All Saints, where I've been there a couple times. I got sick in between the display
Mhm.
because I was at the one parish site and was moving over to the other parish site, and I got hit with some kind of lung rot for a couple days, and it's like okay, that's just par for the course.
And I think it's
It's
so
like I'm not
interesting.
gonna.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting too because it's like in reality as Catholics, we have a completely different outlook on sickness and even death in a lot of ways and to realize that there can be sanctification through those things. I remember when I babysit, a wide variety of people, but there was this one time when an entire family was sick with the flu and the mom needed just like she could not like function. You know, when you have the flu, it's just not it. And when you have like a bunch of littles, she had 8 littles. I mean,
Oh,
It's a
wow.
lot. Yes, and the youngest is, like, 1, so it's like he's still nursing and everything, and she was like, "I completely understand if you don't wanna come over, like, we're all sick and blah, 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 blah," and I was just like, "Nah, dog, I'll come over, I don't care, my immune system could use it, sure." And I came over, and the most I got, I mean, I got sick, obviously, but the most I got was a sniffle because I had already gotten the flu that year, and it's like every 4 years, I think it is, or something, and so I did the laundry, I did the dishes, I made them dinner, and it's about community and being heroic and doing heroic things within our ability. And I feel like people just are too scared to be heroes these days. Real heroes. Tons of people
You
cosplay
know,
all the
we
time, but
we had a fun one in our complex recently. There was a gentleman, a resident I had not met yet. Uh, the place I live in is mostly senior.
okay.
In fact, Katrina and I are probably the youngest people that were there because we got grandfathered in before they made the changes. And I had seen him walking around to the window, and about his third time around, it's like he's looking for something.
Yeah.
Is he looking for an apartment or is he looking for something else? So I went out and I've got this single speed pedal trike that I use and I ride miles on end. Kind of a bit of a surprise on that one because I'm like 400 pounds on a good day, and yet I can put 5, 10 miles on it if I want to. So anyway, I was talking to the gentleman, and he had lost his keys when he was walking around the complex,
Oh.
and so I offered to hop on my trike. I can do the loop quickly because we were burning daylight at that point because it was already pushing close to 5 o'clock. So I went up and I found his keys within about 10 minutes,
Wow.
thanks to a quick prayer to Saint Anthony. Uh, but yeah, and I grabbed his keys for him, and it's like I love doing that
Yeah.
to be able to help someone for that moment, and it sometimes we're the answer to someone's prayer,
Mhm.
whether
And
we
I
realize it or not. And that's kind of the reflection that I had on that entire situation is I was there for someone.
Mhm.
Now, at some point down the road, I may need be the one asking for prayer, and someone may be helping me out. And another point, case in point in this, I had an unexpected display this year. The Standish display kind of came up relatively quickly. I often joke that I can give me a week's notice and I can be at your parish. That's pretty much how it was too,
Oh.
because number one, you had to coordinate the transportation for the project to get to the church, and then you had to coordinate the transportation for me.
Right.
Now, what helped me out in this case is number one, the priest, Father Ron, happened to serve at Christ the Good Shepherd when I was doing one of the displays,
Okay.
so he knew about my work. His brother, who frequently visits him, is a member of our parish. So, so he
Connection.
was, so he, yeah, exactly. So Father Ron's brother was my ride. I ended up doing an overnight trip, which was fine. So yeah, and then the project came back later in the week, and that's sometimes that happens. Sometimes the project comes home that afternoon. Sometimes it takes a couple days. But
I think
and
that's
the general rule about the displays is people ask me, well, how far are you willing to go?
right.
If you're willing to provide the transportation and the accommodations, because I don't charge for this, uh, I'm willing to go where the Lord is willing to send me.
Right. And I think that's a
I've done,
beautiful, like, just testimony of detachment too, of your work and realizing it's God's work. And, if God wants it to happen, he'll make a way for it to happen.
in this case with the parish in Standish, yes, it worked out beautifully. I don't do this for money. I do this out of the love of the Lord.
Mhm.
I do accept donations to help with the cover the cost of the Legos because they're not cheap, but that's not my primary goal. My primary goal in everything related to the project is prayer and in service to Christ. That is what it's always been about with me. And I'm always thankful for the opportunities to share what God is doing in my life with others. So I can hope, I pray that I can give people hope, encouragement, and maybe inspire them to explore their own talents. How can they use their talents to evangelize and share the faith? I mean, I'm the guy that goes in the stores. I keep business cards on hand with links to the project, and I'll talk to people. I'll come up out of the blue and talk to you, I'll usually reference something that's going on, like either an article I'm trying to write or a display I just did or a display that's upcoming, and I'll chat for a little bit. That's just my nature, and it's
Yeah.
something I love to do. I love being able to get out and talk to people, and I have a lot of fun with it because the Lord is allowing me to do something very unique.
Yeah, and I think we need more people who are willing to go out of their comfort zone to evangelize in that way, to not necessarily be a preacher on a street corner, but to meet the people in your community where they are and to be able to talk with them about the projects that inspire you and to talk about their own lives and how to inspire them. I think, like we talk about iron sharpens iron, saints make saints. And I think community at the end of the day is really important. And isolating ourselves is what the devil wants because if we isolate ourselves, we can't sharpen each other and become,
Yeah,
saints. I mean, obviously, you can argue the monks and the
there are some people that are called to a quiet, reflective life. There are others who are called to defend the faith with a passion. There are others like me who are called to share the faith creatively. And you have to, regardless of whatever path you're on, you have to have a passion for what you're doing. You have to have a passion for Christ. You have to have a love of the church,
Mm,
regardless. And I think that's something that I try and highlight in my own work. Uh, Going back to the issue of attendance, I try and highlight the importance of being at Mass. That's why I always have the church full of people. I highlight the importance of prayer because that's what my work is. That's what I'm doing. And for me, to be able to do that is a blessing.
yeah.
To be able to utilize my talents despite my own challenges, which can be overwhelming at times. And yet here I am doing the Lord's work. This isn't so much my project as it is the Lord working through me using my talents that He has given me. And I try and keep that in mind every time I do an interview, every time I go on to a display, every time I talk to someone on the street. This is not my work. I'm just the builder. The
Right.
Lord is at work in all this. Without Him, I would not be able to do this at all. So I
Yeah.
try and remain as humble as I can. I try and keep myself down to earth as much as I can. Uh, because there's always the danger that you get your ego inflated, and that's just not what this is about.
And I think that's a good point, and honestly, a point for everybody to kind of follow is that at the end of the day, it's really not about you, it's about God. And to keep God at the forefront
Yeah,
of your mind, your ministry, just everything, your life is really at the end of the day what's going to make a difference. Your ministry, if you didn't have God at the center of it, it'd be all for naught. There'd be no point to it whatsoever. And our lives have no point to them without
exactly.
Christ in general. So, yeah, I think those are all good points, and John, I really appreciate you coming on here and discussing this topic with us because I think it's really important and will hopefully inspire others.
Thank you. I'm truly blessed to be able to come on today. Thank you for taking the time to allow me to share my talents.
Absolutely, yes, and hopefully we can have you back on in the future to see what else you're up to.
I would love to. I would love to. I'm always up for a conversation.
Yes. No, I love it. Where can my listeners find you?
You can find me on Facebook under Lego Church Project or Substack, Praying at the Bricks. I'm also on Blue Sky and Twitter under Lego Church Project. That's the best way to find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, John. I really appreciate it, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And with all that being said, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Make sure to share, comment, and like, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.